Commander Jessica Anderson had faced many challenges during her 15 years with the United Earth Space Command, but none quite as absurd as trying to explain to an alien delegation why her German Shepherd wasn't a bioengineered weapon. Titan is a dog, she explained for the third time, watching the 7-foot-tall Confederation representatives shift uncomfortably in their environment suits. Their crystalline faceplates reflected Titan's curious expression as he sat dutifully at her side. He's a companion animal, a pet. The lead delegate, who had introduced himself as first speaker Zixel, made a sound like grinding glass. The translation matrix hovering between them rendered it as, "You claim this combat organism is for entertainment." Jessica fought the urge to sigh. The first contact briefings had prepared her for cultural misunderstandings, but somehow they'd missed the possibility that humanity's relationship with animals might be a sticking point. Not exactly entertainment, companionship, friendship. His ancestors helped humans hunt and protect our homes. Now he's part of my family. That was apparently the wrong thing to say. All 6 of the delegates' eyes widened simultaneously, and the crystalline structures along their shoulders began pulsing with alarmed crimson light. "You acknowledge genetic modification of a sentient species for military purposes." The translator's neutral tone couldn't quite capture the horror in Zixel's harmonics. "No, that's not," Jessica started, but Titan chose that moment to notice a squirrel darting across the diplomatic compound's lawn. His sudden bark sent the entire Confederation delegation stumbling backward, their crystalline armor chiming in alarm. Hostile action detected. The security officer behind Zixel raised something that looked unsettlingly like a weapon. The modified combat organism is displaying aggressive intent. "He's not." Jessica reached down to scratch behind Titan's ears, trying to demonstrate there was no threat. This only seemed to distress them further. Physical subjugation tactics detected. Emergency protocol engage. The diplomatic meeting devolved into chaos after that. Jessica's attempts to explain that Titan just wanted to chase the squirrel fell on deaf ears, or whatever the Confederation delegates used for auditory input. The sight of Titan rolling over for a belly rub was somehow even worse. Observable evidence of neural compliance programming. The security officer's report caused quite a stir back at the Confederation headquarters, as humanity would later learn. Things might have stabilized if not for what happened next. Dr. Marcus Williams, the xenobiologist assigned to the diplomatic team, thought it would help to show the delegates examples of humanity's broader relationship with animals. This turned out to be a catastrophic miscalculation. The images of police dogs, therapy animals, and search and rescue teams sent the delegation into what Jessica could only describe as a collective fit of moral outrage. By the time they reached the statistics about the number of species humans had domesticated over their history, first speaker Zixel was literally vibrating with distress, their crystalline structure humming at a frequency that made everyone's teeth ache. "Your species has modified over 400 distinct types of organisms." The translation matrix actually glitched trying to convey their tone. "For labor, combat, and psychological manipulation." "When you put it that way, it sounds terrible," Dr. Williams admitted. "But it's more about partnership and mutual." The delegation's abrupt departure from Earth's atmosphere left a lovely light show and a lot of confused diplomats. Jessica spent the next 6 hours writing what had to be the strangest incident report of her career, while Titan napped peacefully under her desk, completely unaware that he had just triggered humanity's first interstellar diplomatic crisis. The official declaration of concern from the Galactic Confederation arrived 3 days later. It listed humanity's systematic modification and exploitation of subordinate species as a Class 1 violation of galactic law. The fact that Jessica's body camera footage of Titan playing fetch in the park was attached as primary evidence of ongoing biological warfare research would have been funny if it weren't so serious. "Well, buddy," Jessica scratched Titan behind the ears as she reviewed the document, "I think you just made history. Though I'm not sure if starting our first interstellar incident was quite what they meant when they called you a good boy." Titan just wagged his tail, blissfully unaware that his species, along with every other domesticated animal on Earth, had just been classified as one of the most terrifying weapons in known space. Mike Thompson didn't consider himself a diplomatic incident waiting to happen. He was just a Texas rancher who'd taken his skills to the stars, along with his 3 border collies, Pepper, Scout, and Blue. The Confederation research team studying human biological warfare programs certainly hadn't expected to find him out in the asteroid belt, certainly not using dogs to help manage his mining operation. I don't understand. The lead researcher, designated science observer Nix, watched through the observation window as Mike suited up his dogs in their custom space gear. These modified combat units are directing your mining drones. Border collies are herding dogs, Mike explained, checking Blue's helmet seals. Been working with shepherds for thousands of years. Turns out the skills that work for sheep work pretty well for keeping drone swarms organized in 3-dimensional space. The horror radiating from the research team was almost palpable. Thousands of years of genetic manipulation. The translator rendered their harmonics as practically a squeak. Mike shrugged, helping Pepper into her microgravity stabilization harness. More like partnership. These guys are smarter than any computer when it comes to keeping track of moving objects. Plus, they actually enjoy the work. As if to demonstrate, Scout gave an excited bark through his helmet comm system when Mike pulled out the drone control tablet. The sound made the entire research team flinch. Combat signal detected. One of the junior researchers began frantically taking notes. Subject is using sonic command codes. Nah, he's just happy to work, Mike said, but he was already starting to understand why the diplomatic corps had sent out that memo about avoiding technical explanations with the Confederation. Watch this. He released the first wave of mining drones into the asteroid field. At his hand signal, the 3 dogs launched from the airlock, their specialized suits letting them maneuver through space with practice ease. What followed was a display of coordination that had made Thompson mining the most efficient operation in the belt. Each dog knew their role perfectly. Pepper swept wide around the asteroids, her suit's thrusters letting her guide stray drones back to the main group. Scout took point, identifying the richest mineral deposits with the suit's sensors that had been specifically calibrated to match a dog's natural hunting instincts. Blue stayed close to the primary cluster, keeping the drones tight and organized. The Confederation team watched in what Mike assumed was either horror or awe. Their crystalline faces were hard to read. The efficiency of the operation was undeniable. What had once taken a full AI system and human oversight team to manage was being handled by 3 dogs who thought they were just playing an extremely complicated game of fetch. Your combat units display tactical intelligence, science observer Nix noted, their crystalline structure vibrating with concern. Yet you control them with primitive physical gestures. Control. Mike laughed, watching as Blue executed a perfect spiral maneuver to redirect a drone that had strayed too close to a hazardous mineral deposit. Have you ever tried to control a border collie? These guys are my partners. They work because they want to. That triggered a rapid exchange of harmonics among the research team that the translator either couldn't or wouldn't process. Mike caught something about psychological warfare implications and autonomous combat units with independent decision-making capabilities. The situation reached its breaking point when Mike pulled out the treats he used to reward the dogs after a successful run. The sight of him praising them and providing chemical reinforcement substances, dog biscuits, sent the research team into full emergency protocol mode. Evidence of chemical enhancement and behavioral modification confirmed. The report they filed that day would later be cited in the Confederation's case for immediate military intervention. The fact that they included footage of Blue doing the zero-gravity flip for a treat as evidence of advanced combat maneuvers would become a source of dark humor among human diplomatic staff. Mike found out about all this later, of course. At the time, he was more concerned with the way the research team practically fled his mining station, their ship accelerating away from the asteroid belt at speeds that had to be pushing their safety limits. Well, guys, He radioed to his dogs as they finished up their work shift. "I think we might have just made things worse." The happy barks he got in response echoed through the comm system. 3 space-suited dogs completely unaware that they'd just reinforced every one of the Confederation's worst fears about humanity's biological weapons program. In retrospect, maybe he shouldn't have taught them to play fetch with the smaller asteroids. Emily Martinez stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Council with Max, her golden retriever, calmly sitting at her side. The Confederation's ultimatum still hung in the air. Surrender all genetically modified combat organisms within 48 hours or face immediate military intervention. They want us to give up our animals. Council member Roberts seemed to be having trouble processing the demand. All of them. For rehabilitation and genetic restoration, Emily confirmed, her hand resting on Max's head. As chief of Interstellar Search and Rescue, she knew exactly what they'd be losing. They believe they're liberating slaves. The council chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Emily waited until the noise died down before nodding to her technical team. "I'd like to show you something before we vote on our response." The holographic display activated, showing footage from the previous week's rescue operation on Europa Station. The base had suffered a catastrophic pressure failure, trapping 27 colonists in sealed emergency compartments across the facility. Standard rescue protocols were impossible, Emily explained as the footage played. Debris blocked the main corridors. Emergency power was failing. And then there was the ice storm. She paused. This is what happened next. The footage showed rescue teams deploying from their ships, each accompanied by their animal partners. Golden retrievers in specialized pressure suits led the way, their enhanced olfactory sensors detecting human scents through the station's compromised hull. Behind them came the therapy cats, their zero-gravity agility letting them navigate through gaps too small for human rescuers. The dogs located all 27 survivors in under 20 minutes, Emily noted. The cats delivered emergency oxygen supplies through maintenance ducts we couldn't access. But here's the moment that matters. The display showed a particular rescue dog, Buddy, stopping suddenly during the evacuation. The handler trusted the dog's instincts immediately, redirecting the entire rescue team. 3 minutes later, the corridor they'd been heading down collapsed. "That's not training," Emily said quietly. "That's not genetic modification or exploitation. That's partnership." Buddy saved 18 lives that day because his handler trusted him. The footage continued, showing therapy cats curling up with traumatized children in the rescue ships, their purring helping to calm panic attacks. Search dogs working in teams to clear debris. Even the station's resident rat population, descended from carefully bred lines, had helped by chewing through jammed electrical cables to restore emergency power. The Confederation sees weapons, Emily continued. They see slaves. They see something they don't understand, and it terrifies them. What they don't see is this. The final clip showed Max, her own partner, refusing to leave the side of an injured colonist when the station's pressure began to drop. He'd stayed, offering comfort and warmth, until rescuers could cut through the bulkhead. They're calling for military intervention over belly rubs and tennis balls. Emily's voice carried clear conviction. They're threatening war because they can't understand that sometimes the strongest bonds are chosen, not forced. The council chamber had gone silent. Even the most hardcore diplomatic appeasement advocates were looking thoughtful. The Confederation has given us 48 hours to surrender our modified combat organisms for rehabilitation, Emily continued. They want us to give up the partners who've helped us reach the stars, the companions who've saved countless lives, the friends who've stood by us through every challenge space has thrown at us. She scratched Max behind the ears, earning a gentle tail wag. I suggest we show them exactly what they're asking us to give up. The vote was unanimous. Emily's rescue footage, along with similar videos from across human space, was broadcast on every frequency the Confederation could receive. Dogs helping evacuate damaged ships, cats monitoring radiation levels on deep space stations, Therapy animals helping colonists cope with deep space isolation. Even the rats who'd become essential to maintaining ships' complex electrical systems. The Confederation's response came within hours. They called it the display of military capabilities. They called it a demonstration of human bioweapon versatility. They called it many things, but they missed what it really was, a declaration that humanity would not abandon its oldest friends. As Emily prepared Max's spacesuit for their next rescue mission, she wondered if the Confederation could ever understand that Earth's greatest achievement wasn't taming other species, it was learning to be worthy of their trust. The war that followed would teach them that lesson the hard way. The Artemis Deep Space Colony had always been humanity's proudest achievement. The first self-sustaining settlement beyond the solar system, home to 50,000 colonists, and much to the Confederation's horror, nearly as many animals. When their liberation fleet dropped out of hyperspace, they expected the colony's surrender within hours. They didn't expect Lieutenant Sarah Cooper and the 1st Interstellar K-9 unit. Contact in 5 minutes, Sarah announced to her team as they took their positions around the colony's perimeter. 6 handlers, 6 dogs, and a defensive plan that would either go down in history or get them all killed. Remember, they're expecting traditional military responses. Let's show them something new. Her German Shepherd, Thunder, already wore his combat spacesuit, the specialized gear allowing him full mobility in space while protecting him from radiation and debris. Around them, other handlers were finishing final checks on their own partners. 2 more German Shepherds, a Belgian Malinois, a Border Collie, and a Rottweiler. The Confederation ships emerged from their final jump in perfect attack formation. Their sensors would show them the colony's defensive capabilities. Shield generators, point defense systems, the usual array of human military technology. What their sensors couldn't detect was Thunder's wagging tail as Sarah pulled out his favorite ball, now modified with micro-thrusters. "Time to play fetch, buddy," she whispered through their suit-to-suit comlink. "Just like we practiced." The first wave of Confederation drones never saw it coming. As they formed up for their attack run, 6 dogs and their handlers launched from concealed positions around the colony. To the Confederation's tactical eye, it looked like random movement, impossible to predict or counter. To anyone who'd ever played with a dog, it was clearly a game of fetch in 3 dimensions. Thunder led the charge, his spacesuit's thrusters letting him chase the modified ball through loops and spins that no targeting computer could track. Each time he caught it, the ball's defensive systems would disable nearby drones. The other dogs followed similar patterns, their unpredictable play behavior creating chaos in the Confederation's carefully planned assault. They're redirecting energy to their targeting systems. Sarah's tactical display showed the enemy ships struggling to adjust. They still think this is a coordinated military strategy. The Confederation commanders must have been baffled. Their advanced combat algorithms couldn't account for a Belgian Malinois doing backflips in 0 gravity to catch a ball, incidentally disrupting their formation. They had no protocol for dealing with a Border Collie herding their drones into a defensive kill zone while practically dancing with joy. "Second wave incoming," Sarah called out. "Time for the cavalry." That was the signal Colonel James Martinez had been waiting for. He led the colony's mounted response team out of their hidden bays, riding horses specifically bred and trained for space operations. The sight of a full cavalry charge in spacesuits would have been absurd enough. The fact that each horse carried specialized electronic warfare gear made it something else entirely. "Remember, folks," Martinez's voice crackled over the comm, "horses handled the chaos of traditional battlefields for thousands of years. Space isn't so different." The horses moved with practiced ease through 0 gravity, their riders using the animal's natural agility and courage to maneuver through the drone swarms. While the Confederation's tactical systems were still trying to make sense of the dogs' play patterns, they completely failed to account for space horses executing perfect dressage movements through their defense grid. Sarah watched her tactical display as the Confederation fleet's formation began to break down. Their rigid command structure couldn't adapt to the controlled chaos of animals moving naturally through space. When Thunder executed a perfect spiral around their flagship, chasing his ball and disrupting their primary sensor array in the process, she could almost imagine their confusion. "This is impossible." The Confederation commander's transmission carried notes of panic. "These combat forms display no logical pattern." "That's because they're not fighting," Sarah transmitted back, watching Thunder play with pure joy despite the battle raging around him. "They're playing. That's what your tactical analysis keeps missing. We didn't turn our animals into weapons. We just invited them to be themselves." As if to prove her point, the Border Collie chose that moment to successfully herd an entire squadron of enemy drones into a defensive trap, then looked around proudly for approval. The Confederation fleet began its retreat shortly after, their tactical doctrine shattered by the realization that they couldn't fight an enemy that wasn't actually fighting back. "Good boy," Sarah praised Thunder as he returned with his ball one last time. Around the colony, other handlers were doing the same, each dog receiving treats and praise for literally playing their way through a space battle. Let's see them explain this one to their superiors. Lieutenant Ryan Cooper stood before the Joint Chiefs of Staff, trying not to smile as his German Shepherd, Shadow, methodically disassembled what had once been the Confederation's most advanced surveillance drone. The dog wasn't using any tools. He was just happily chewing it apart for the pure joy of destroying a new toy. "As you can see," Ryan gestured to the heap of formerly high-tech equipment, "we've discovered why our four-legged partners are so effective against Confederation technology." He paused as Shadow proudly presented him with a mangled piece of alien alloy. "They don't overthink it." Admiral Jackson leaned forward, watching Shadow return to his happy demolition work. "Explain." "The Confederation builds everything on pure logic. Their combat systems are looking for strategic patterns, tactical responses, military protocols." Ryan pulled out a tennis ball, instantly getting Shadow's attention. "But dogs just play." He demonstrated by throwing the ball. Shadow abandoned the drone immediately, executing a perfect zero-gravity fetch maneuver that would have baffled any targeting computer. The ball's trajectory curved around support pillars, through maintenance gaps, and finally back to Ryan's hand. That's a sequence of moves that took their best tactical AI 3 hours to analyze, Ryan explained. To Shadow, "It's just Tuesday." The briefing room screens lit up with footage from recent engagements. Dogs in spacesuits playing fetch through asteroid fields, coincidentally disrupting enemy formations. Cats chasing laser pointers across hull surfaces, inadvertently scrambling sensor arrays. Even a hamster in a zero-gravity ball had managed to disable a Confederation cruiser by rolling through its defensive grid in search of treats. Their entire military doctrine is based on predicting and countering rational combat decisions, Ryan continued. But you can't predict play. You can't calculate joy. Every time they develop a countermeasure, our animals just have fun with it. The footage shifted to show Shadow's most recent mission. The dog had managed to turn a high-stakes space battle into what essentially looked like a game of keep-away, leading enemy drones on a merry chase, while human forces picked them off one by one. "We're not winning because we've created better weapons," Ryan said, scratching Shadow behind the ears. "We're winning because we've spent thousands of years learning to work with partners who don't think like us at all." General Martinez, who had initially opposed the integration of animals into space operations, nodded slowly. The Confederation sees everything through the lens of dominance and control. They can't understand partnership. Exactly. Ryan pulled out a second tennis ball, this one modified with micro-thrusters. "Watch this." Shadow's ears perked up as Ryan activated the ball's gravitational erratic mode. It began bouncing off walls in completely random patterns, its movement governed by a quantum uncertainty drive that even human physicists couldn't predict. The dog caught it in under 10 seconds. How? Admiral Jackson's question caught in her throat as Shadow proudly returned the ball. Because he's not trying to calculate its trajectory. He's not thinking about physics or probability. He's just... Ryan shrugged. Being a dog. He turned to the assembled officers. The Confederation's fundamental mistake was thinking we turned animals into weapons. They never understood that we succeeded in space precisely because we learned to work with different kinds of intelligence on their own terms. The screen showed more footage. Search and rescue dogs finding survivors in ways no sensor could match. Cats detecting hull breaches through behavior changes before instruments could register them. Horses helping maintain stability on low-gravity colonies through their natural sense of balance. They think we're using some kind of advanced control system, Ryan said as Shadow settled at his feet. They can't grasp that we just learned to be worthy of their trust. Admiral Jackson stood, her decision made. Lieutenant Cooper, expand the program. I want every ship, every station, every colony working to integrate animal partners. Not as weapons, as teammates. Yes, Mom. Ryan saluted, then reached down to pet Shadow. Though maybe we should wait to tell the Confederation that their most feared adversary just wants belly rubs and treats. As if to emphasize the point, Shadow rolled over, tail wagging, completely unconcerned that he'd just helped reshape the future of interstellar warfare. The most sophisticated military minds in the galaxy, and they've been outmaneuvered by the simple joy of a dog playing fetch. Sometimes the best weapons weren't weapons at all. No one expected the turning point of an interstellar conflict to involve a corgi named Pancake. The diplomatic station orbiting Jupiter had been chosen for its neutral ground, a final attempt at negotiations between Earth and the Confederation. Security teams from both sides maintained a tense standoff, their weapons primed but silent. Captain Rachel Sullivan tried to maintain her professional demeanor as she faced the Confederation delegation, but it wasn't easy with Pancake squirming in his custom spacesuit beside her. The 3-year-old corgi had recently qualified as a therapy dog for deep space missions, and this was supposed to be a simple training exercise. As you can see, First Speaker Zixel's crystalline form shimmered with barely contained agitation. Your combat unit displays signs of unstable energy patterns. Rachel sighed. He's wagging his tail. It means he's happy. The entire Confederation security detail shifted uncomfortably. Their sensor arrays kept trying to classify Pancake's behavior patterns and failing miserably. The corgi's stubby legs and constant wiggling simply didn't fit any known combat stance. That's when Private Jessica Chen, passing through the station's main corridor, made a crucial mistake. She squeaked Pancake's favorite toy. What followed would later be known as the Great Space Zoomies Incident. Pancake, overcome with excitement, broke free from his handler. In zero gravity, a corgi's short legs were no limitation. He bounced off walls, spun through maintenance tubes, and zoomed through the station's corridors like a furry pinball, barking with pure joy the entire time. Containment breach. The Confederation security chief raised their weapon. The combat unit has gone rogue. But something unexpected happened. As Pancake ricocheted past the Confederation lines, his pure, infectious happiness triggered something deep and primal in the crystalline aliens. Their bodies began to resonate with his energy, their crystalline structures humming in harmony with his excited barks. What's happening? First Speaker Zixel's translator glitched as their form began to vibrate. This sensation. It's... And then, to everyone's shock, the dignified leader of the Confederation delegation began to bounce in sync with Pancake's movements. It spread through their ranks like a wave. One by one, the Confederation representatives found themselves caught up in what could only be described as an impromptu dance party. Their crystalline forms sparkled and chimed, creating an otherworldly light show as they bounced and spun through the station's corridors. They're playing. Rachel watched in amazement as hardened Confederation warriors abandoned their posts to join what had become a zero-gravity game of chase. Their tactical formations dissolved into swirling patterns that matched Pancake's joyful chaos. Dr. Marcus Williams, the xenobiologist who had accidentally started this whole conflict, finally understood. Their crystalline structure resonates with certain frequencies. Pancake's happy barks must have triggered some kind of sympathetic response. The diplomatic station's security footage would later become the most watched video in human space. A corgi leading a conga line of bouncing crystalline aliens through zero gravity, their forms glowing with colors that human eyes had never seen before, while both human and alien security teams stood by in stunned silence. It lasted 17 minutes before Pancake finally tired himself out and floated back to Rachel, tongue lolling happily. The Confederation delegates slowly returned to their positions, their crystalline faces unreadable but their forms still glowing with residual energy. First Speaker Zixel was the first to speak. This was not combat training. No, Rachel smiled, scratching Pancake's ears. This was just a dog being a dog. Having fun, spreading joy, making friends. The Confederation delegation huddled together, their private discussion creating a symphony of chiming sounds. When they finally turned back, something had changed in their stance. "We request further cultural exchange," Zixel announced. Perhaps we have misunderstood the nature of your partnerships." As the diplomats began drafting new protocols for peaceful interaction, Pancake dozed in Rachel's arms, completely unaware that his impromptu game had just changed the course of interstellar relations. Sometimes, it turned out, the best way to bridge the gap between species wasn't through careful diplomacy or shows of force, but through the simple, universal language of play. Though Rachel did make a mental note to install better leash attachments on the next generation of canine spacesuits. Admiral Lily Baker had faced down Confederation warships without flinching, but today's presentation to the Galactic Council made her nervous. The future of human-animal partnerships hung in the balance. She took a deep breath and opened the carrier beside her podium, letting out her secret weapon, a three-legged orange tabby cat named Pegleg. The council chamber erupted in alarmed murmurs as Pegleg hopped out, his custom mobility harness glinting under the chamber's lights. The cat surveyed his audience with typical feline indifference before settling into his favorite spot on Lily's shoulder. "This," Lily announced to the assembled representatives, "is what the Confederation calls a defective combat unit." Junior Delegate Crystal, the youngest member of the Confederation Diplomatic Corps, leaned forward in her crystalline environment suit. Her species' usual fear response was notably absent as she watched Pegleg begin his ritual bath. "Your combat unit appears damaged," one of the senior council members observed. "Why has it not been terminated?" Lily smiled, reaching up to scratch Pegleg's chin. "Because perfection isn't what makes a partnership valuable. Let me tell you his story." The holographic display activated, showing footage from the Jupiter station disaster. Pegleg had been a station cat, one of many kept to control rodent populations. When a micrometeorite struck the station, causing catastrophic damage, most evacuation protocols failed. "Our sensors didn't detect the debris field in time," Lily explained. But Pegleg did. Hours before impact, he began herding other cats and station personnel away from what would become the impact zone. The footage showed Pegleg, then with all four legs, guiding confused humans towards safer sections of the station. When the impact came, he was caught in the blast that saved dozens of lives. "He lost his leg," Lily continued, "but never his spirit. During rehabilitation, we discovered something extraordinary. His injury had made him more sensitive to spatial distortions. He could detect micrometeorite threats before our most advanced sensors." Junior Delegate Crystal's crystalline form hummed with interest as Pegleg demonstrated his abilities, moving purposefully to a specific section of the council chamber. Moments later, the station's sensors registered a minor gravitational anomaly passing through that exact spot. "A defective combat unit." Lily shook her head. "No, a hero who turned his injury into a gift. A partner who chooses, every day, to help protect others." The council chambers fell silent as Pegleg made his way across the room, pausing to headbutt Crystal's environment suit. To everyone's surprise, the young delegate reached out hesitantly to touch him. The contact sparked an immediate resonance between Crystal's crystalline form and Pegleg's natural bioelectric field. The chamber filled with soft chimes as her structure harmonized with the cat's purring. This, Crystal's translator struggled to convey her wonder. This is not domination. This is connection. What happened next would change the course of galactic history. Crystal, moved by some instinct she couldn't explain, opened her environment suit. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations as Pegleg calmly stepped inside, curling up against her crystalline form, as if he found a new favorite sunbeam. The frequency. Crystal's voice carried notes of joy that the translator couldn't quite capture. It matches our natural resonance. It feels like home. The secret spread quickly after that. Videos of Crystal and Pegleg became the most shared content in Confederation space. The sight of a high-ranking diplomat curled up with a three-legged cat, both of them purring in crystalline harmony, did more for interspecies relations than 1,000 diplomatic meetings. We didn't modify them to be weapons, Lily explained to the council as they watched Crystal playing with Pegleg. We didn't even modify them to be helpers. We just opened our hearts to the possibility of friendship across species boundaries. Everything else, the working partnerships, the deep bonds, the incredible abilities, that all grew naturally from there. As if to prove her point, Pegleg chose that moment to alert them to another spatial anomaly, while simultaneously using Crystal's crystalline form as a climbing gym. The resulting mixture of professional achievement and playful affection said more than any speech could. Perhaps, the council leader admitted, watching Crystal's joyful interaction with her new friend. We have been asking the wrong questions. Instead of questioning how humans control these beings, we should have asked, how do they become worthy of such trust? The answer, purring contentedly in an alien environment suit, seemed obvious now. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from control, but from learning to love what makes others different. The distress call from the Confederation science vessel Crystal Seeker reached the Jupiter rescue station at 300 Earth Standard Time. The ship had suffered catastrophic damage after colliding with an uncharted asteroid field. Its hull breached in 17 places. Rescue Commander Tom Hayes knew they had less than 2 hours before the ship's life support failed completely. All rescue teams, prep for immediate deployment, he announced over the station's comm system. This is what we've trained for, and yes, bring the full complement. Within minutes, the station's hangar bay became a symphony of organized chaos. Human rescue workers suited up alongside their animal partners. Dogs in specialized spacesuits, cats in zero-gravity gear, and even the station's elite team of space-adapted rescue rats. The Confederation crew's panic was evident in their transmission. Human Rescue Station, be advised. Our hull integrity is at 12%. Crystal Seeker, hold position. Tom replied as his team launched. The cavalry's coming. All of it. He could imagine their confusion when the sensors showed not just rescue ships, but dozens of smaller life signs accompanying them. The Confederation had only recently begun accepting human assistance in emergencies. They'd never experienced a full human-animal rescue operation. The scene that greeted them was grim. The Crystal Seeker's beautiful crystalline architecture was shattered, fragments of the ship scattered across space like frozen tears. But Tom's team had something no other rescue service in the galaxy could match. Partners who didn't rely on sensors and computers. Deploy the advance team, he ordered. Lucy, his golden retriever, led the charge. Her spacesuit's enhanced sensors, combined with her natural ability to track life signs, made her perfect for finding survivors in the wreckage. Other dogs followed, each working with their human partner to systematically search the debris field. Contact, Lucy's handler reported. She's found survivors in the aft section, but the corridors are too damaged for direct access. That's when the cats took over. Their zero-gravity agility and ability to squeeze through tiny spaces made them ideal for reaching trapped survivors. They carried emergency oxygen supplies and communication devices through gaps no human or machine could navigate. But the real heroes of the day were the rats. Descended from generations of carefully bred search and rescue rodents, they could access the ship's damaged electrical systems through maintenance tubes. Their handlers watched through tiny helmet cams as they chewed through jammed cables and bypassed failed circuits, restoring power to critical life support systems. The Confederation crew's initial fear turned to amazement as they watched their rescuers work. Dogs tracking survivors through debris clouds by scent alone. Cats leading the way to damaged sections by sensing air currents. Rats working in teams to repair complex systems with surprising intelligence. "This is not possible," one of the Confederation engineers transmitted as they watched a rat crew reconnect a vital power coupling. "These are not simple animals." "No," Tom agreed as he supervised the evacuation. "They're professionals. They're heroes. And most importantly, they're family." The rescue operation became a dance of seamless cooperation. When a sudden power surge threatened to trap a group of survivors, it was a combined effort that saved them. Dogs located the danger. Cats led the evacuation route. Rats rewired emergency systems. Humans coordinated it all, trusting their partners implicitly. 7 hours later, Tom submitted his report to both Earth Command and the Confederation Council. The statistics spoke for themselves. 100% survival rate. 0 casualties. 347 Confederation citizens saved by the very combat organisms they had once feared. The last survivor to board the rescue ship was a young Confederation scientist. She paused at the airlock, her crystalline form glowing with an emotion the translators couldn't quite capture as she watched Lucy receive treats and praise for her work. "We were wrong," she announced to the rescue team. "These are not weapons or slaves. They are," she struggled to find the right words. "They are like the stars themselves. Beautiful. Free. Choosing to share their light." 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council passed the Interspecies Partnership Act, recognizing human-animal bonds as a protected form of cultural heritage. Earth's animals were no longer classified as weapons, but as partners in humanity's greatest achievement, learning to see the best in other species and earning their trust in return. And if the Confederation's new space rescue program suddenly included a lot of suspicious crystal formations that looked remarkably like cat beds and dog parks, well, that was purely coincidental.